It wouldn't be an episode of Let's Talk Broncos if we weren't 12 minutes late. And that was in honor of the GOAT's birthday today. Tom Brady, obviously, celebrating a birthday today.
I thought you were
And
going to say me. I was like, it's not my birthday.
I thought she was going to say it was our Darren.
I wasn't. My little nephew is also turning 1 today. So shouts out to everybody who has a birthday today and not any other day in August. Looking at you, Zach Seegers. Welcome, Let's Talk Broncos. Brie Maestas, Joey Richard, Zach Seegers. We're fully in the depths of training camp, y'all. Like it is full throttle. We've been witnessing some really fun action. I just want to start off by saying, my goodness, what an event it has been. Simply, and I think Zach and I talked about this most recently, is that we're seeing the defense live up to that paper expectation, right? The additions to the roster, the vibes that are going around. I think vibes is an overused word, but I have no better way of putting just the general atmosphere that is happening when you're out there at Broncos training camp. So if you're lucky enough to have a front row seat like Zach Seegers is, we'll be asking and leaning into him about all news and coverage coming out of Dove Valley, the new foundation being set for the new training camp facilities, et cetera, et cetera. But we got some good news to talk about tonight. If you have questions, please drop them in the chat over there. If you're watching on Twitter, it's not going to work. You need to go on over to YouTube and you can search for Let's Talk Broncos. The chat loves your hat, Joey. I have to ask you, though, what and how can you possibly support the Colorado Rockies? Go.
This is a great question, right? This is a question that I was even asking myself before we hopped on the show, which is what makes this even funnier. The conversation I brought up was, man, do I love baseball, and even more, do I love the baseball teams that suck? Because the Rockies, oh my God. Yeah, I don't know why I'm wearing this. It's kind of what I have right now.
Hey, they might not be the worst team ever. They're right there with the 2024 White Sox, but they're not running away with it anymore. And that is progress, my friends.
That's not progress. That's disappointing. So you, not only do you suck, but you don't suck the worst. Like you couldn't just possibly go for the record here. You had to somehow eke it just enough so that you weren't the worst ever baseball franchise. To me, that's more disappointing because they suck at sucking too.
Listen, I was telling Broncos country this a few off seasons ago, and they hate it when I'm talking about, like, if you're going to suck, just be the worst.
Okay, but here's the thing. They've been so bad, they can't even benefit with a draft pick. Your whole case was, hey, hope the Broncos are bad and you get a great draft pick. The Rockies are frozen out of the top 10 picks this year because they've had a top draft pick too many years in a row. That's how bad they suck.
That is. Leave it to Muse coming in with the Rockies would be better off with Hackett as their head coach or manager, as he
it couldn't hurt any.
Suck it, sucking must suck. Yes, Paul. I like saying that word though. It's been fun. All right, guys. I keep clicking everything.
Hey, they're 3 games. They're 3 games better than the White Sox 2024. Just saying.
Oh, Zach, it's okay. Like you don't have to possibly keep finding a way to still. No. I'm getting distracted because my cat is ricocheting off of windows right now. We're just going to hope she doesn't hurt herself.
Let's stop throwing your cat.
I thought if I just launched her, everything would be okay. And she's now up somewhere she's not supposed to be. So, guys, really fun news outside of training camp is we've got some extensions. Some money is being thrown around here for current Denver Broncos. Obviously, Courtland Sutton getting extended. Zach Allen, the next one up. We talked about that being a high priority for the Denver Broncos heading into this 2025 season. But also there's a couple of pending contracts out there. And so I want to know, in addition to, and we'll talk about the breakdowns as it relates to Courtland and Zach Allen, but I need to know, what does this mean for current pending contracts or contract negotiations? Because we know right now there's some that are under consideration, like Nick Bonito, but with the edge market exploding across the league and questions surrounding some individuals being unhappy with their current teams, a la Micah Parsons, what does that mean for who's the next contract up when it comes to the Denver Broncos? Zach, I'm going to start with you. Where does the conversation kind of go next step?
You know, I think it should go to Nick Bonito. I've seen a lot of fans in my mentions saying John Franklin Myers has to be next up. And I'm not buying it. I get that there's some hesitancy about the Bonito situation. It being maybe a 1-year wonder, his lack of great success against the run game. there's a lot of great edge rushers that aren't like the most impactful run stuffers. I just had one on the tip of my tongue and I'm totally blanking it right now.
Reddick being one. There's plenty.
Hassan Reddick, but I feel like there's one that's really good that's like, he's not really that focused on it'll come back to me. But I think that can be okay. I guess in the modern NFL, no one's letting players walk as good as Nick Bonito. Like, look at the best available free agents these past few seasons. You're probably going to keep him around. It's very unlikely that a player that good, even with his potential flaws, at a high value position like edge rusher, walks for nothing. That just like, it doesn't really happen in the NFL anymore, unless it's like a headache case like Hassan Reddick. But like, I just, why can't you sign him for a little more than the Josh Sweat deal? Lock him up now. And I think that a contract will age just fine. Like, I don't think I'm just not that worried about signing Nick Bonito and it aging poorly. The salary cap is just shooting up like crazy. He's established himself as a great edge rusher, I think multiple seasons now. 2 years ago, you didn't have the sack production, but he was, by pass rush win rate, by pressure rate, by pass rush productivity per snap, like by any of those metrics, he was already one of the better pass rushers in the league. So we've seen it for 2 years now. Just the sample size was bigger this past season. And I wouldn't be hung up on paying him. I think it's far more likely that if you don't pay him ahead of this season, that costs you money. I think like the two downsides are paying him, he ends up being great and you cost yourself money that way, or you pay him now, he ends up being bad and you cost yourself money that way. Looking at Bonito's NFL career up until this point, and I think it's far more likely you cost yourself by not signing him than you do by signing him. They should knock it out. That's where their eyes should turn now.
I don't disagree in a lot of facets. I do think there is more risk to the Benito signing. I want to say that though. I think to this one, there's a lot more risk than the other players we just talked about. Especially when you're just looking at the style and play or how Benito wins, right? I don't know how much versatility there is in how he wins as far as pass rush. And then you start even looking past that and they're like, okay, well, as a run guy, not that great. I think if you're talking about versatility, he's probably better at dropping back and being a space player than he is a run defender. So, which is something we all knew coming out of Oklahoma for him. But I do think there's more risk there because of it. With that being said, though, I think Zach brings up a good point. With the cap raising, Bonito could have a worse year and still demand the same amount of money next year, just with the cap going up, right? Zach, do you agree with that? Like, he could have a worse year this next year and still get the same amount as this offseason just because the cap's going up and stuff like that.
And
and other players are getting signed and so on and so on. So I agree with you in that facet. I think it's interesting, but I would be wrong not to bring up that this one is, I think, more concerning than the other extensions, or riskier than the other extensions we've made so far.
And it was reported by the Denver Gazette earlier this offseason that his requests were in excess of $20 million, right? If it was $27 million, that probably gets reported as in excess of 25. If it's 33, it probably gets reported as in excess of 30 million. So if he's in that 20 to $25 million range, which I think is likely based on what we have reported in terms of per year compensation, like that slots him as like the 20th some highest paid edge rusher in the game. Like, especially if you adjust for cap inflation, you're talking about a guy in the 20s or the 30s. So that's a team's best edge rusher. And not every team is Max Crosby out there. Like, you can afford to have the 22nd highest paid edge be a guy who is a little lackluster on rundowns. And I agreed with Joey. This is more risky than a Zach Allen, than a Cortland Sutton, because he has demonstrated it less. But if he does have one more good season, I guess, like, is it more likely that he looks like he did the last 2 years, or that he looks like how he played his rookie season? Because if he looks more like he did these last 2 years, it's going to be $40 million a year. It is going to be $35 million, because the argument against paying him at that level of production right now, Trey Hendrickson, by the way, that's the guy I was trying to think of. He's going to make north of $30 million whenever that situation gets resolved. He doesn't really play the run. So you can absolutely survive that way if it's a productive enough pass rusher. It's far more likely, in my opinion, that you're sitting here, 8 months from now, or not even 6 months from now, going, oh my God, we have to pay Nick Bonitto $40 million because he had another 10-sack season. Then you're going, oh man, he fell flat on his face. We can get away with paying him 15 to 20 million. I don't know. I think, yes, there's more risk involved. I still think the riskier avenue is not paying him.
Yeah, I would have to agree simply because the market has tended to blow up and the momentum has been a little bit egregious when you start looking at those contracts that are coming through. But there's two different conversations that are happening now, right? With the availability of other talent outside of Bonitto, you now have a conversation of whether or not you would one, trade for the player and a pick and kind of absorb an even greater contract, or would you give up that developing talent that you already worked so hard to kind of get that production outside of? So I guess where I'm stuck on it, and there's a question up here that I wanted to get to as well from D Bronx. My concern with Bonitto is if Vance gets a head coaching job. Joey, I know you've been kind of on that pathway right now. Not sure the next defensive coordinator would be able to use him as well. Do you see that as being a probability, Joey, for Bonitto to take a step back if he were not to have the continuity with the current defensive coaching staff?
Yeah, but I also think that could be said for a lot of players on this defense. I even think like Zach Allen's a phenomenal football player, but if you want all of a sudden you change defensive coordinators and now the philosophy is our 3 technique needs to be like a gap eater guy. He needs to sit there and be able to take doubles and be really stout at the point of attack guy. Zach Allen wouldn't be nearly as good in that role. Zach Allen is get the hell up field, Mr. like fuck up the play guy. That's who Zach Allen is, right? So I think you are paying these guys in mind thinking we're coaches, and as the GM, I'm hiring these coaches to get the best out of my players. So I don't know if you could even go into a contract extension with that mindset. I don't know if you could do that. You're on mute, Zach. It's beautiful. We're back.
Hey, I haven't done it in too long. I want to echo what Andy's saying here. I think he's pretty dead on. If it goes the Jim Leonard route, which I think would be the most likely option at this juncture, of course, Leonard and Vance could both get hired away. Who knows? But Leonard kind of comes off that Rex Ryan, Mike McDonald philosophy tree that's spreading across the NFL right now. All sorts of defensive coordinators: Tennessee, Miami, Seattle, of course. Baltimore still has one. I think there's a few other locations. And a large part of that defensive philosophy is like the sim pressures, the sim rushers. And to pull that off, you need pass rushers who are comfortable dropping back in coverage, which I think, as Joey demonstrated, is something that Nick Bonitto is good at. Like, Kyle Van Noy in Baltimore, like I think Uchenna Nwosu can be at times in Seattle. Bonitto's, I think, a better player than either of those two guys right now. But kind of can fill that role well. And we've also seen George Payton value that skill set in an edge rusher even before Vance Joseph was installed with the drafting of Nick Bonitto, frankly. So I wonder if I'm a little less concerned about it because I think the likely avenues they'd go for the next DC would align with Nick Bonitto. And the fact that the GM clearly values this type of edge rusher makes me think it's even more likely they go with that style of DC.
Right.
All right. I almost muted myself too, so we were all back on it. Zach, thank you for that. Joey, appreciate your thoughts on that one. I guess I'm just mixed on it. I don't understand the idea of waiting for Nick Bonitto to have another productive season in order to justify paying him the standard set of what a contract would entail in this current season, heading into a year where the Broncos can't presently afford to lose him at that position. At least not right now. I don't think there's the proven depth yet. So I guess that opens myself up to this next question that can tie into some of the training camp conversations that we're going to have. Zach, as you're out there, what are you seeing from the depth perspective as it comes to that edge group or, linebackers in general? We have to get into some injury conversation on the inside, but the outside is where I'm curious right now.
Yeah, I think that makes it a little easier to potentially move off Benito, just because the early returns on Ellis, Jonah Ellis, and Q Robinson, also guys who kind of fit that can drop back into coverage mold when you need them to. I that makes it potentially a little easier to move off Benito, feeling like you have some solid options in place. I think we need to see a lot more out of both those guys before you feel comfortable with them replacing Benito.
Jonah Ellis has
Yeah,
serious potential, though. That's one thing Broncos country.
yes, it's very exciting.
He was good last year, and that went under the radar, like just because of how good other players were at the same position he played. But as a rookie, Jonah Ellis was really promising. Just throwing that out there.
And I'll also note one last thing I wanted to say about the Benito financials. When you look at Jonathan Cooper, Cortland Sutton, Patrick Surtain, Quinn Miners, Zach Allen, any of these recent extensions for the Broncos, all of those players were more established than Nick Benito. And in many cases, a lot of those players were better than Nick Benito. Yet in, I believe, every single case, the Broncos can get out of those contracts 2 years after signing with like minimal dead cap pain. So I just struggle to believe that like the Broncos have negotiated a way for them to be able to get out of the Patrick Surtain deal. But once they sign Nick Benito, they're stuck for years. You know what I mean? Like they can sign him now. It cannot work out and they can still probably get out of it that like, okay. I'd say the more damaging scenario would be because, that's a 1 year dead cap hit of like 15, 20 million when you cut him. That's not fun, but that's 1 year. Whereas you sign him at that $40 million a year number, that might as well be a $15 million dead cap hit every single season he's on the roster because you missed out signing him at 25 mil per.
Right,
so
right.
I just, that's last thing there. Now, Q Robinson and Jonah Ellis looking so good might give you the thought to get it back to the original point. And Jonah Ellis has been dominating this camp, especially now that he's a little healthier. Early on, he was still dealing with a shoulder thing, I think. Dominating these last few practices. Q Robinson, before he got on his knee brace, was dominating. Exciting to see what he does back in practice. I believe he'll be back on Monday. If those guys are good, then maybe you just decide, hey, let's let Benito walk, get a 3rd round comp pick, and kind of go with these waves of rushers and draft another guy to hopefully replace Benito there. I don't think you're replacing Nick Benito with that 3rd round comp pick you'd be getting in return. If they're there with it, I would be like calling up the Bengals to see if they wanted to trade for him or someone else. Cause even if you don't think he's worth the really lucrative extension, I think everyone in Broncos country would agree that he's worth more than a like 3rd round pick, the potential, not even a guaranteed 3rd round pick. Like if Team X called up the Broncos right now and made a trade for Nick Benito for a conditional 3rd round pick, everyone in Broncos country would be livid. And so I think just with that in mind, if you're already in the place of like, we don't want this guy long-term. We like Q Robinson. We like Jonah Ellis. Trade Nick Benito for something more valuable.
I think it's a fun conversation to have, specifically because we're at a part in a place as we're watching the Broncos and getting ready for this season. The team's at a really good position that you can start having these conversations. the gritty and the minutia of the circumstances is that there are going to be individuals that can take those places. We can be gritty about positional depth and what is at stake here. So I like the conversation, but it also brings me to the more negative part of this is as we move to the inside, you've got some injuries that are racking up. So let's go through them one by one, and they all just happen to play the same position. Sorry. Drew Sanders, Alex Singleton, Dre Greenlaw. By no way is that in order of severity, but the entire position has been kind of wiped out in a little bit of a week span. That was already a question mark heading into the season with Alex Singleton returning from his injury to then break the other part of his body with a broken thumb. Already back practicing, will be able to club it. Not going to be as difficult as anticipated, but I think it does add a little bit of a flag on top of what was already a question mark surrounding his return and ability to get back up to pace. Drew Sanders, foot ligament injury, out 4 to 6 weeks. And then Dre Greenlaw, having a little bit of a lower body injury, expected to be back. It's not noted as anything serious, but it does create a little bit of pause. How are you guys feeling? Joey, I'm going to start with you. What's the option moving forward if, let's say, this puts a little bit of a bruise on how you were already looking at that group? Do you see them going after someone else to help kind of shore that up?
I mean, I would be looking at the free agents and thinking, hey, is there anybody here I can sign relatively cheap, or like really cheap, honestly? Guys available, maybe a vet-esque player. Like, I think that's how a lot of us are looking at Alex Singleton to begin with. Like, if Alex Singleton hit free agency right now, I don't think he's like getting a massive bag from another team. I think you can go out there and get a comparable talent. Like, did Josie Jewell sign anywhere, for example?
No, he's his thing's complicated because he's dealing with concussion symptoms and isn't able to play.
Yeah.
And so he kind of like stepped away from the Panthers while he deals with that. So hopefully he's an option on the table, but it probably won't be for a few months until we know for sure.
Fair enough. But the point is the point. Like, I think there are serviceable or not.
Jay Mosley, Jawan Bentley, two guys I've been circling for a while.
Exactly. There are guys, veteran linebackers, who have done good things in the league available, and you could get relatively cheap. I don't think it's a necessity to sign them now. I don't think that's a thing. The Broncos have been able to bring in linebackers mid-season. I remember who they brought in during the Fangio times. What?
Kenny Young,
yep, and came in and played solid for us right when we needed him to. So
everyone wanted to extend him to a big money deal.
Yeah, that's true. Yep. And so I don't think it's a necessity that they need to do it now. I'm fine with the Broncos looking and seeing how their linebacker room looks at the moment. Let's see them on the field first, and then making a move like that. So I don't think it's a necessity right now, but I could see that happening. I would keep my eyes open for a guy that I think could fit this defense well.
Even a guy like Eric Kendricks, he's way up there and hasn't been great for a while. Like last year, I think he was pretty rough for the Cowboys. Year before, he wasn't great for the Chargers. But if the Broncos find themselves in a place in case of emergency, that's an incredibly intelligent veteran that you feel like you could plug in and trust to do his job pretty regularly, and rather than turning to Kareem Reed or JB Brown or whatever UDFA options they have at the very bottom of the depth chart.
I was typing on mute to make sure I didn't screw up there, but I mean, I was trying to look at it. Everyone keeps mentioning K'Wan Alexander. I think he had pretty recent surgery. No, he's not currently on the Lions any longer. So potentially, I don't know if you have to dip back necessarily that deep, but it does open up the room a little bit to see who else is going to step up. But then you also have Lavelle Bailey, which has been a hot topic of conversation all throughout camp, who is creating those moments, those splash plays during training camp, which is going to lead now with the ability to step up and take additional snaps as we get some real NFL speed football in preseason. Who's to say that a young individual currently on the team doesn't end up making a name for themselves when it comes to this position?
Very possible. I don't think we should be ruling that type of stuff out either. I mean, the training camp, it gives you a picture, kind of an idea of things, but until these guys, especially at the linebacker position, get to go hit in an actual football game, that's when we're really going to be able to tell. So pick some of these linebackers apart from each other. This is more just running and hitting. You're going to see a lot of guys look good based off of like the athleticism they had. I never heard anybody be like, Josie Jewell's killing this training camp right now. You never heard that in your life.
And I will say, I think Lavelle Bailey flashing in training camp when this is a time when the athletes dominate, to Joey's point, is such a promising sign. He has, I was just curious, looked it up quick, a 3.27 RAS. His composite size grade is poor. His composite explosion grade is poor. His composite speed grade, guess what? It's poor. His composite agility grade, just okay. A very unimpressive RAS card, probably just seeing how Peyton has invested in athletes. One of the least impressive RAS cards of anybody on the Broncos right now. And I'm telling you guys, he is constantly in there, like in the mix every play, making a lot of tackles. I think he's been plenty respectable in coverage, even covering options like a Lucas Kroll, who like isn't the best overall tight end, but is a pretty dang good athlete. I've seen Lavelle Bailey hang with him, and I think it just demonstrates like the problem with drafting linebackers is so many of the highly drafted ones of the favorite prospects are just the best athletes because they can clean things up at the college level, but it's such a mental position. And you see the Fred Warners and these mid-round picks end up the Dion Henleys, another mid-round pick, end up being the best guys at the position.
Mm-hmm.
It's not crazy that a UDFA like Lavelle Bailey, as I finish buying time for Joey, a UDFA like Lavelle Bailey ends up being one of the better options in the room for this team.
Yeah, you think I would have this podcast lighting thing down by now. It's been a few
Joey
years.
refuses to front light himself. It's always like he's in witness protection.
No, I do.
I've got the two-face lighting going on.
Very professional podcast we have going on here.
You just get a dang ring light. Let's get it together. This is like year 4, year 5. I don't know. I don't know what we're doing anymore. All right, guys. Well, let's tie it in a little bit here, right? We're talking about the potential I don't know, like shaking up the hive a little bit with injuries and extensions and conversations and negotiations that aren't happening, et cetera, et cetera. But there's also some fun and exciting things happening as this new season is approaching. And I really wanted to get the sense of there's a noticeable difference. You're going into Sean Payton's 3rd year. The tone of camp has changed. I think from the outside, and even in the small amount that I've been able to participate in, the group of peers, I want to say more unified. I think the players are celebrating each other and themselves more. And I think they're responding to coaching and a little bit differently. And they're finishing reps a little bit more intentionally. The vibe feels, I think intentional is the word that I want to use here. Zach, since you've been out there and you're at field level, I want to know, what are you seeing when it comes to culture inside this team right now? And I'm not looking for the rah-rah side of things. I want to know, just from a level of seeing it every single day, does it feel different as it does kind of just from seeing the general conversation surrounding it?
Yeah, I think this is the best culture I've seen on a Broncos team. And I'm thrilled to say it because I remember all the concern about, oh my God, is Sean Payton Joseph Stalin? Is he going to just have everyone on a miserable death march to their graves, withering and cold? And no, it turns out these guys are like Jameis Winston on the torn ACL, having a grand old time dancing and partying in the locker room.
Hopefully not on a torn ACL.
Not on a torn ACL, but I think that's the mental image that always comes to mind when I think of a Sean Payton locker room. Like, damn, those guys were having a lot of fun for Sean Payton being such a miserable guy. I think Sean Payton's just frankly a lot nastier to media and in like his outward facing stuff than he is to his team. It seems like his players throughout the years have generally really liked him. And the culture right now in Denver is incredibly strong. I think you see guys like Marvin Mims and Malcolm Roach chirping back and forth all practice long in like a very friendly, but also very competitive way. And it's bleeding over into the press conferences. And they're both talking trash. Malcolm Roach called him a mosquito, or it started with Marvin Mims calling Malcolm Roach a fat boy. And then Malcolm Roach said, hey, I can change how I look. I can get in shape. I can lose some weight. He always is going to look like a mosquito. And like have them talking some trash back and forth in again, a way that's playful, but also like that practice. It was Wednesday when all the trash talk was going back and forth. You had Adam Troutman and a series of other Broncos saying that's the best practice we've had either in my life or since I've been in the NFL, definitely since I've been with the Denver Broncos. And it's because it's getting injected with like a little extra competitiveness. It's a really fun atmosphere out there. Everyone's very business-like though. Like people are, I think they recognize the talent on this team relative to past teams. And I think everyone's taken shit pretty seriously in terms of like, hey, we have a relatively special opportunity here. Let's take care of business. But it also is just a great bunch of dudes. Like atmosphere wise, it reminds me of the fun the 2022 defense was having in like the first 4 weeks of that season. Like I remember coming into the locker room after that week 3, it was like 11-10 victory over the 49ers or 10-9, something like that. And Russ was sucking ass like nobody's business. And you go into the locker room and the entire defense is celebrating. I've never seen a happier locker room. They're just losing their damn minds. Everyone's yelling, "We're the best defense in the league." Like, just, it was a party. It was like they had just clinched the division or something. And the atmosphere of this, the energy, the vibe that this defense gives off is closest to that I've seen. And then the talent just jumps off the field. I think, I love where this team is at right now. I'm feeling too confident about the Broncos. I feel like I'm about to get the rug pulled out from under me because I'm feeling too damn good about this team.
I feel like this is the best culture I've seen in quite a while for the Broncos too. Just outsiders looking in. I remember like the Hackett off season, and everyone was like, "We really need to have a guy in here who's going to lighten the mood." And, I think people did enjoy their training camp and stuff like that with Hackett, but it was in a different way, right? That was like goofy happy. Like,
it's when you have the substitute teacher come in and they're playing a movie or whatever.
Yes. Meanwhile, this one is like, it's that, but we're mixing it. Like, there's a good amount of competitiveness involved in this whole thing. You can feel the competitiveness in the air when these guys are talking, right? Meanwhile, when you go back to other ones, I think during the Fangio time, it was like what people are talking about. And I'm Fangio's biggest guy on here ever. But I do think that was more of the iron fist feel players were feeling. I think this is a good mix. You're keeping it competitive. The coach can crack down on players when it's time to do that, right? Like, he can still do that. He's done it. Yeah, I saw the reports about him going a little crazy on Jaleel McLaughlin, right? Pulling him aside and yelling at the entire team for a little bit. So he's able to do that. But meanwhile, the players are still having fun and still competitive about it. So it's all good. I think a lot of the times teams, I know this is said a lot, teams take on the personality of their head coach or quarterback. What did we expect from the Russell Wilson, Nathaniel Hackett days? I mean, it was goofball.
One little anecdote I wanted to add. I was listening to an interview today with Devon Valet, and he was talking about credit to DNVR for the interview with Benny Fowler. He was talking about the leaps Bo Nix has made in his second year, and he was talking about how much more confident he is in the offense and just knowing the different calls or whatever, and talked about how yesterday during the scrimmage, Sean Payton made a call, and Bo Nix was like, "Yeah, bet, I got you, coach," and then called a completely different play in the huddle because he was like, "I like this one better," and they ran with it. And I think that that shows maybe some of the Ferris Bueller that Sean Payton's talked about. But also, like, I think these players are empowered to an extent, and there's a good feel with everything right now. I just wanted to jam that story in there because I heard it today and thought it was pretty cool.
Love it.
Yeah, I think expanding on all of this is super important to the overall, I guess, emphasis that we're placing on.
No,
don't listen to troll accounts.
You can't listen.
Oh yeah. I almost got caught.
Zach, God, the one time I wish you were me. Ridiculous. Joey mentioned the secret word of the day. The phrase. He said, "You can feel it in the air tonight." So the question to everyone is now best hype song. And please don't go into elaborate detail as to why. I just want to know what gets you pumped up to go, I don't know, crash some fools. Like this Joy Taylor account who's ruining my vibes.
Crash some fools like Joy Taylor.
No. Nope, that's not what I said.
Sounded like what you said. It sounded a lot like what you said. Gosh, man, right now it's been some sugar on my tongue, some ring. Man, that's where I'm at. Joey, what's your pump up song to get you to smash some fools like Joy Taylor?
No.
Listen, we did the move topics, right? This is a PC show. This is what people.
This is not a PC. Joey's throwing around the F-bomb earlier, and I was calling it a PC show. I don't even skip.
When people want to calm me down, all of a sudden we're family friendly, and then we get the Joy Taylor comments, and everyone goes off the rails. Like, it's.
Okay, well, my next question is going to be posed to everyone because you already wanted to. I feel like everything I say now has to be in a way in which nobody can call phrasing out on me. Okay, So Bo Nix is in a relative headspace where he's been doing all the off-season work, right? He's been channeling his inner Drew Brees. He's been thrown onto the NFL top 100 list by his peers. His team can't shut up about him. Sean Payton will not stop emphasizing how important it is that he's taking this next step. Now, are we crowning Bo Nix a little bit too early, or are you guys just as excited as I am? Because Zach, you absolutely are right. I think a lot of us are in this very optimistic vein of you can't be down on the Broncos right now. But I think there are some very important tangible variables when it comes to discussing Bo Nix and his development just through the offseason, right? He had a battle back from the back injury. He's now been able to rehab and gain strength. He's looking the part out there, but also his movements are just that much more fluid. You see a lot of smoothness in his release. You see a lot of confidence in his decision making, and that obviously is just in camp. But he is going against a defense that is really trying to throw a spur in everything that this offense is trying to do. You can relate it now that he's got his weapon back in Cortland Sutton. That extension, that's not going anywhere. That target's not going anywhere. But you've also seen the development start to happen for a Troy Franklin. You're seeing a Marvin Mims. You're seeing a Devon Vele. So my initial question is going to be, how important is it that Bo Nix kind of, I wouldn't even say takes the leap, takes the next step, just leans into that, because it's really important, not only in a cultural perspective, but when it comes to a quick start when it comes to the first half of the season. So Zach, to you, what are you seeing out of Bo Nix, and what gives you the optimism there? Hopefully that's not a lead. You could say you're pessimistic if you want to.
I'm feeling very optimistic. I think the best way to describe it to someone that hasn't been there is it looks like he has some of the answers to the test now. I think last year he was, like me in high school, just rolling up. I've not studied a lick for this. Let's see how this goes. I'm going to bank on, and not to say he wasn't studying. I'm sure he was studying, but kind of just going off of raw ability and like what he had kind of baked into him already as a quarterback, and living by the seam of his pants and trying to make plays as they arose and just try and find the, oh my God, there's a pass rusher in my face. I turned right. No, my God, there's another. I got to turn the other way. Oh, I'm 5 yards downfield. I'm scrambling. I got a 15-yard gain. Oh my God. Like that was kind of his quarterbacking style last year. This year, he knows the answers to the test. He doesn't have all the answers. I wouldn't say he's mastered the offense or anything, but you're seeing him work through his reads quicker, more regularly. He's not as fast to, I think, drop his eyes and look to scramble. I think he still does too much of that in terms of rather than just like kind of navigating the pocket, more like going into runner mode. Like, how can I run and find some green grass and then throw from there? I think he still does that a little too much. But overall, it is just a lot more calm, controlled. It's someone who, I got this pressure look. I know the diagnosis for that. As opposed to last year, it was, I know this pressure look. Oh my God, how can I make this play work anyways? And he did a fine job with that last year. I think he'll do that much better having the answers to the test.
Yeah, I think, okay, so I'll be the one that I'll start with this. Yes, Bree, I'm very excited about Bo Nix. I think last year during training camp, I started to build my excitement up for Bo Nix. The more I heard people hate the pick, honestly, I was like, wait, I think people are a little prejudging this early, right? Which naturally put me on the more positive of the Bo Nix side last offseason. And this year, yes, I am very excited, but I do think there is a little hesitation where it should, to everything Zach said, can he slow it down? And really, it's just like letting the play develop. I think a lot of people are like, yeah, he needs to fix his footwork. And yes, that's true. But I think to more of an extent, the reason you're seeing the footwork not there is because he's not even trying to work it. He's trying to run to open field, like Zach said. That's a lot what we saw last year. And it worked. Why? Because for all the reasons that people said he was a bust of a pick when the Broncos drafted him, he ended up actually being really good in. He's a hell of an athlete, and he can get it done and do that type of stuff, make a bad play good with his feet. So I just think the next progression in his arc is letting the play develop, going from 1 to 2 instead of 1. Oh, that's not there. Let me run and try to make this out of a broken play. So I just need to see that one extra piece there. I'm excited. I'm not sitting in that hot sun at training camp. I'm not doing that with you guys. Shout out to both of you. I'm not doing it. I'm going to come here every single year and say that. I'm not doing it.
I'm the only one who's in the hot sun. Zach's in a tent, living they're serving lime water to him, and he's fine. Like he doesn't.
Bree, in one of these days, we'll get you down there.
Zach's all bougie at training camp nowadays. Bree's over there with the sunscreen dispenser, the 90 SPF sunscreen.
I don't even wear sunscreen. I just spritz myself with an accelerant and hope for the best.
Listen, there's no SPF that'll keep you. If you're sitting on that damn hill, it could be 90 outside. Really, in reality, it feels 180. It's crazy.
180 is so
if you take 10 steps off of that hill, all of a sudden, it's nice out here. I don't understand what's up that hill.
We don't even have a that's ridiculous. This Broncos LTB, we really wish we could pay our public relations team a little bit better so they could do more work and less heckling, but that's fine. It's just this is the burden that we must bear.
Zach, do you see Bree trying to relieve herself of the PR duties that we give her?
Yeah, hand it off.
Now.
How do you know it's not me? Like, how do you know that's not what I'm doing over here on another screen?
I have yet to see a single spelling flaw.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. No, but he's a great speller.
Wow. I spell good. It wasn't even easy. It wasn't low hanging fruit. It was just pure and wrong. And my lawyer will be in contact. In case, it's complete and utter libel. Just so that everyone knows, LTB is no longer on the path of friendship. We actually just put on faces for the show now. So entering into it is absolutely just business. It is a pleasure doing business with you all. All right. We've talked about I don't know what you're mumbling about, but we talked about optimism, and I want to kind of lean into it a little bit on maybe some questions that we may have still pending out there. We talked about the injuries, we talked about the depth at some positions, but we didn't talk about maybe some lingering things. So, Zach, I wanted to know from camp, we've seen a lot of great things, and I'm not even saying they necessarily have to be negatives, but what questions do you have remaining that you hope get answered prior to preseason? We know that's coming up really quick. The first preseason game is right around the corner, but I feel like there's still an air of we have questions still unanswered. Mine's center. I think there's a little bit of like, what's going to happen at the offensive line? Right. I was talking to a friend of the program, Mario Vitanzi, at training camp last week. And my question was centered around who's going to be the next guy up? Who's going to be that depth piece where, they can plug and play, where their versatility is going to come into a lot of important conversations when you have a injury at guard or tackle and you need to put somebody in there. Like, who's had the rotational availability to be able to step in there? And I think that's what Sean Payton's game plan has been, right? From drafting, from free agency, is who can play multiple roles, who's going to be able to make sure there's not an appreciable decrease in production if someone were to go down. But the question that hasn't been answered is who is that on the offensive line? So my question to you guys is, what are your remaining questions? What needs to be answered this week before preseason starts? Zach, I'll start with you.
Man, for me, I guess what I am really curious to see, I guess how large of a role can Jahdae Barron earn in the defense? I guess it's hard to come up with things that I feel like I'll get an answer from training camp over the next few practices that I don't have yet. And I think that's one of them. Like how will he continue to slot into this defense? We're seeing a lot of him. He seems to keep getting better every single practice. I think he's going to have a really strong rookie year. I don't know if he'll be the outside corner or not when they're in base defense, but I do think whenever he's on the field, I think he's going to have a really strong rookie year just because he's so pro ready. Like the instincts, his feel for the game really flash on the practice field. He's always around the ball. He's incredibly physical. I've seen him set the edge in like run defense multiple times in a way that's been pretty inspiring. And I'm just curious, like how large of a role will he have earned himself, I guess, when that first preseason game starts? Is he ahead of Jaquan at that point in time? Right now, I'll tell you he's not. That said, we were saying these exact same things about Bo Nix last year. Sean Payton's going to make these young guys earn their role. And excited to see what happens with Jahdae Barron earning his role over these coming days.
I think mine falls kind of in, well, it's the same as Zach in that it's a DB, but same in the Bree as I'm looking at the depth of the unit, and that's the safeties for me. Like, I know Hufanga, right, is awesome when he's on the field. I mean, we're talking about an all-pro caliber player when he's been healthy, when he was with the 49ers. But with that, I mean, yes, he had a lot of injuries. What do we have behind that makes sense for the Broncos? There's names on here that have made it circles in Broncos country throughout the last few years, right? I'm thinking of JL Skinner. I'm thinking of DTY. I'm thinking of even like Devon Key last year, PJ Locke, all of these names. But especially with PJ Locke coming off of injury, like, it just seems that it's a lot more name recognition in Broncos country than it is actual on-field talent that we've seen for most of those guys. So that's a little scary for me. It's a little spooky. I think we saw it. Like when Devon Key had to go play last year, the safeties fell off a cliff. It was not good. So I just don't want to be in that same situation.
I love that call. I will say PJ's looked really good to me in training camp. Mm-hmm. Looks like they're still treating him like that third safety. Our national nightmare of Devon Key is not over yet. I hate to say that. I think he's the other, maybe they carry 5 safeties, but assuming they don't, I'd say he's the last man in that room. I would love to see JL Skinner or De'Laren Turner yell, pass him by. I'm sure JL Skinner will make it. Actually, now that I'm talking out loud, I'm sure Skinner makes it as at least the 5th man because of his special teams ability. But I would be very, very happy if, like, I don't know, nothing against Devon Key, but last year was rough, man. I'm hoping they have a higher ceiling option than what we saw.
Hey, before we sign out here, Zach, this is a little off of our list here, but I wanted to get your question on this because I don't know. Like I said, I'm not sitting on that hill. And you guys are there. What have you guys seen out of RJ Harvey at training camp? That's a player I was super excited about when the Broncos got him. I was high on RJ Harvey this whole thing, and I feel like his skill set would translate well to a training camp setting. Has it?
Yeah, I don't know. He hasn't looked unreal, I guess. Like, I don't know. I could have seen him having like a Montrell Washington-esque camp where it's like this guy's so explosive and quick that during these non-contact periods, he just looks unstoppable. And I don't think you've seen that. I also wouldn't say I'm worried about it at all. I think he's had a strong training camp. I don't think it's been exceptional by any means.
The hands look. Have you seen him catching passes?
The hands look good. I think now I'll get into the guy who I think's been most impressive as a receiver in a second, but I think RJ Harvey's probably been the second best pass catcher out there. I think contact's lessened here, so we can't get a true read, but at least his mental understanding of the pass protection responsibilities has looked solid to me when he's been out there. I think he's he hasn't looked lost. He looks like he knows what he's doing. And it hasn't been Montrell Washington-esque or whatever, but he has looked very fast. There's been multiple times where he's, turned the corner on the edge in a way that, other Broncos running backs weren't last year. I think what you do see from him, he's very explosive, but unlike Jaleel McLaughlin, you'll see him bounce off some guys, or someone will try and trip him up and he's able to spin off it and carry that momentum downfield for 5-6 yards or so. You see some of that. The guy who's really been standing out to me, and I want to see it in the preseason, but I might start banging the drum for this guy to be running back 3, Blake Watson. He looks like
right? Yeah,
he's the best pass catching back of the bunch. He transitions from pass catcher to ball carrier so naturally, so easily. And he's the guy whose speed and like short area quickness has looked especially slippery out there. On Wednesday, when it was that more physical practice, Bree was there for that one. Blake Watson had the best runs of the day. He tore off multiple 15, 20-yard carries. And he's going up against lesser competition. He's going up against third teamers. But, you've got Estime going up against third teamers and Bidet going up against third teamers at times. And I don't think they've looked as impressive as Watson. I feel good about Harvey, but Dobbins, by the way, is going to, I think, hold down that starting job until RJ Harvey takes it away from him. I think Peyton just likes the trusty veteran who's going to get the yards that are blocked for him. And I definitely would prefer the ceiling raising back as opposed to the floor raising back to get more carries. But I think he's going to have to wrench those carries out of Dobbins' hands.
Well, that feels like that was already kind of the plan with bringing in a JK. I don't think it really necessarily takes away from the idea that the Broncos liked their pick in RJ Harvey, but I think no matter what, every player that, comes into the NFL has that transitional period where they need to get up to the NFL speed because it truly is different. But Zach, you touched on a really important word there, explosive. I think that's what stood out the most, especially when the defense has been gunning to blow up every single run opportunity the Broncos been throwing out there. He's still having those types of plays, even though they're kind of less contact than you would hope so in a live action game. You're still seeing a lot of explosiveness that I think is important just from an idea of where we're going with this run game. And so I wanted to highlight that. And yes, I think that the hands game is there, but I think there's a lot of optimism going into this. And Joey, I want to thank you because every time I go into a conversation as it relates to running backs during training camp is not to mention or think twice about speed being a factor out there because it simply is hard to tell it apart when you've got players out there. But I think the running back room in itself looks really good. Zach has touched on it multiple times that there's a little bit of chaos there when it comes to who's going to get that kind of third nod. But I do like the conversation that J.K. Dobbins had very recently. I can't remember with who. I want to say maybe Ryan, but the idea was this running back by committee thing could all be sort of a wasted air and wasted energy because he really does see himself as being that lead back there. So I guess we will see how that plays out, specifically as we see how the line is able to manage all of that. But also last but not very least, before we get out of here, I did want to mention to everyone that the Broncos mailbag, the Let's Talk Broncos mailbag is still a thing. That'll be going live Thursday this week. So if you'd like to leave your questions in the comment section below, please do. If you didn't have your question answered live, this is a great opportunity in order to do so. And then we're going to debut. We're going to be debuting preseason recap shows here on the Let's Talk Broncos network. What are we? I don't even know. Anyways, it's nice to see everybody. I'm going to get out of here before I flail around anymore. Go Broncos. Thanks for supporting the show. We'll see you next time.
Go Broncos.